Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and let me begin by saying thank you to all of you for giving a life of service, for being that less than 1% who has served our country, who has taken our oath, worn our uniform, and carried our flag at home and abroad. For those of you who have served during the Vietnam War era, a special thank you. For my country, sadly, did not welcome you home in a manner at which you deserve. So on behalf of me and my family, thank you for your service to all of us during Vietnam. I know my father was one of the 1%. He served during the Korean War in the Navy. And that tradition, sadly, was not passed down to the rest of us. But I believe that we have been able to help veterans and service members in other ways. There is something that I know we share in this room, our faith in the Lord, and that God makes all things right. And God also puts things in our hearts and people in our path to do the good that is His bidding. I was in Beaver Creek, Ohio, and I was speaking to a Rotary group, and my topic was Veterans Treatment Courts, where they started, where they had come to, where we were in Ohio. And I left that Rotary knowing this. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I said, God, you need to help me grow Veterans Treatment Courts across Ohio. 1 week later, I was at Buckeye Boys State, and I met Bob, Commander Schmidt. He thanked me for being there. He enjoyed my speech, really welcomed me, thanked me for thanking the veterans, and he said, I am going to be the commander of the American Legion Department of Ohio beginning July of 2018. And I said, well, Bob, that sounds amazing. That's great. What does that really mean? What are you going to do as commander? And he said, Sharon, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to grow Veterans Treatment Courts across Ohio. Many would look at that time and say, coincidence. I looked at that moment and I hugged Bob and said, you are my God moment. He said he's been called a lot of things, but never a God moment. I think you guys need to lighten up on it. But the reality for me, he was my God moment. Because from that time forward, I knew I had a partner in trying to go Veterans Treatment Courts across Ohio. On some of the chairs, and if some of you didn't get it, I've put together some extra copies. I always start by saying, these are our veterans across Ohio in all the counties by percentage. If anybody doesn't have one, they'll send them back. You can pass them behind you, thank you. We are the 6th largest veterans population in the United States of America. But our state is sadly not one of the top 10 places for veterans to live. Austin, Texas is number 1. Cincinnati is number 40, or Columbus is 40. I have that list and I didn't bring it with me. But as I started thinking about how many veterans we have in Ohio, I started thinking about the truth of the research. After every war, beginning with the Civil War, we've seen a rise in our jail and prison population. 10% represent veterans across the United States of America. It is not a coincidence that these numbers rise after every war engagement when you really get into the science. The RAND Corporation states that 2.9 million service members have now served in the theaters of Iraq and Afghanistan. Because it is an all-voluntary military service, they have been redeployed 4 or 5 times. If they are in special operations or any specialized branch, they are on their 11th to 14th tour of duty. As a result of that, they're experiencing what we call the invisible injuries of war trauma. flashbacks, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress, suffering depression, and from there they become polysubstance users and they self-medicate. Whether it's alcohol, drugs, or the like, they're crying out for help. When you actually sit and read the research about why treatment courts started, you actually have to go to New York in 2008 when Judge Russell started realizing, when he was doing his drug and mental health docket, what we would call a SAMI court, and the number of veterans he was seeing in those numbers. It was a phenomenon. He had never had those numbers before. But the one thing that was beneficial to him is someone on his staff was in fact a veteran, and they began having the conversation. And what they found out was these men that were coming through the SAMI court docket were suffering from reoccurring nightmares, PTS, traumatic brain injury, and other symptoms of war. That began the first Veterans Treatment Court. When I began to look across Ohio, we have answered that call in some fashion. And this is our map. If the county is red, it means it has a Veterans Treatment Court certified by the Ohio Supreme Court. If it's blue, it's a new treatment court. But this should not be the map of Ohio with the 6th largest veterans population. We should have more. And this is where the commander and I have agreed to work together. I started on a track of 62 counties and meeting more than 100 judges, visiting with them one-on-one, and having the conversation about educating them about what the veterans population looked like in Ohio, in their county, and then what a veterans treatment court does. There was not one judge who had not seen a veteran come through their court. But only 3 of the 100 or so judges that I talked to actually knew what a veterans treatment court was and understood it. As a service member or veteran comes into the justice system, they're not identifying themselves as a veteran. It seems shocking to me, but it is the truth, for 3 reasons. 1, they know that their conduct has fallen below the standard of their uniform and they have great shame and are embarrassed. 2, they're afraid that the judge will actually sentence them much harsher as a result that they believe their conduct has fallen below the standard of their uniform. And 3, they don't believe they're a veteran at all. The largest veterans population in the United States of America, 26% has never served in a war zone. To them, they are not a veteran. To them, it is only the men and women who have carried our flag across the globe and picked up a rifle and fought on the front lines that are a veteran. But they are veterans. And sometimes their service not on the front lines causes them to have TBI, post-traumatic stress, depression, and polysubstance using. They are no less a veteran. As I said that to judges across Ohio, I would be met with laughter. I didn't take it personal. I always said, "Are you laughing at me?" And they would say, "No, Sharon, I'm not laughing at you. I just can't believe you're saying this to me." And one by one, a judge would say, "Just last week, the same thing, that very thing happened to me." One judge sent a young lady to Marysville Correctional Institute, the reformatory for women. He didn't know what else to do with her. He had put her on a term of probation, and still she was not living up to the terms of probation. He had nothing left to do, and he incarcerated her at Marysville. It is only when she hit the doors at the receiving center of Marysville they found out she was a veteran, 2 times in Afghanistan, and suffering from active PTS. I stopped using D with it because I was told by veterans, I don't have a disorder. I just have post-traumatic stress from being engaged in combat. He couldn't believe it when he said it, when I was speaking to him about that very thing, because she was ashamed. That's why she didn't tell him. And she was afraid of him and what he might do if he believed her conduct fell below the standard of her uniform. That conversation has been carried forth across Ohio. 47 judges after those visits signed up to come to an educational segment, a continuing legal education forum that was hosted, in fact, in partnership with you, the American Legion, and the American Veterans Department of Ohio, and the Ohio State Bar Association's Military and Veteran Affairs Committee. For an entire day, we trained those judges who attended on what a treatment court looks like, why we do it, and how to partner, and a call of action to lean forward, to advance veterans treatment courts in one of three ways. I'm not there to sell them on the Ohio Supreme Court's certificate that will hang on the wall. If a judge does that, it gives them special benefit, the ability to have an ex parte communication with the defendant without violating our judicial canons. But beyond that, if they don't want to do the certified treatment court route, to think of other ways to get the job done, to overcome, to adapt, to identify, and to begin there, to make the invisible visible by changing the way they ask the question, are you a veteran, to have you served? And asking the question sooner as they enter into the justice system, as opposed to later, just before sentencing. For those judges who don't want to go through and get a certified treatment court, they had options. They can actually enter into a memorandum of understanding with a partnering court, and they transfer the probation and treatment to a certified treatment court. As I started having those conversations, I realized it was already being done. You see, this map really isn't real. It's real if they have a certified treatment court, but this isn't the statement of what judges are doing across Ohio. Because if I take you up to Lake County and I introduce you to the 3 general division judges who would have jurisdiction over felony criminal acts, when they identify veterans and they are going to put them on community control, a term of probation, and they need treatment, they enter into a memorandum of understanding, and the veteran can travel to Cuyahoga and go through the wraparound treatment court. The judge in Lorain County is reaching out to Erie and Huron County so that if they have a veteran on their docket, they can enter into a memorandum of understanding, and they can go over to Lorain County in order to engage in the wraparound treatment court. If I take you down to Warren County, the municipal court judge that's running the veterans treatment court there has now had a memorandum of understanding with the judge in Mason Municipal Court, and he's going to take in those veterans, and now he's reaching out to the other 2 municipal courts in Warren County so that we holistically are looking at all veterans who are coming into the justice system there. Why it becomes important, and why those conversations become important, and why it was so great of an undertaking by your commander is there is more work to be done, and we have a way to partner. Even if they don't want to do a memorandum of understanding, they can still partner. I say it tongue-in-cheek, perhaps a little, but there isn't much that sometimes I think the federal government does right. But I think there is something they are doing right now. Growing the program through the VA called Veterans Justice Outreach Workers. Every VA has a Veterans Justice Outreach Worker, and their sole mission is to partner with the judges in their area so that when they identify a veteran in the criminal docket, they do exactly what their title says, Veterans Justice Outreach. A justice-involved veteran then meets with the VJO, and they help them determine eligibility, what treatment programs are available, What's available right now to get him a bed? I challenged my own home county of Butler. Chief Dwyer called me one beautiful Sunday morning as I was driving across to Ohio, and he said, Sharon, I have a couple questions. I said, go ahead, Chief, I'm doing nothing but driving for the next couple hours. And as he's asking me his questions about something else, he's getting ready to sign off, and I said, whoa, Chief, wait, before you hang up on me, let me ask you this. How many veterans do you have in the Butler County Jail today? And he starts laughing at me. It's a habit, right? People like to laugh at me. He starts laughing at me and he says, I cannot believe you're asking me this question. Last Friday, my 2 intake officers came to me and said, Chief, we have a problem in the jail. We have more veterans in our jail than are admitted. And he said, how do you know? If they're saying no to the question, how do you know? 2 deputies who had been 2 tours of in the country of Afghanistan, 2 tours of duty each, said, Chief, we know. We know by the way they stand, they look, they answer questions. We know how they interact with other inmates here. They are different. And I challenge the chief to do something else. Instead of asking, are you a veteran or have you served, to use the VA's program. You see, the second prong of what they do is the VRSS program, the Veterans Reentry Service. As a result of that program, you can actually run every name, social security number, date of birth of an inmate in a correctional institute or in a term of probation or coming through the justice system, by a court, by a sheriff, by law enforcement. Within 24 to 48 hours, you get back in that same list every single person who is identified by the DOD as someone who's been in service. That's when the work of the Veterans Justice Outreach Worker began. In my home county, they actually sent off the list. They had a 56% increase in the identification of veterans in the jail. They contacted the Cincinnati VA, and the Veterans Justice Outreach Worker came to the jail and began an assessment packet. They won't treat them when they're in the jail, but as they went out to the individual judges that they were going to stand in front of, that judge then knew this is a veteran, these are the services available to them, and by the way, this is what we have open right now, right here, today. That is the great work that we are talking about doing. And for those who don't do the certified or the memorandum of understanding, we're talking about infusing these concepts. A Veterans Justice Outreach Worker is free to local government. There is no charge to pick up the phone and get a VJO on the line. There's no charge to having them come down to your court. What we are doing right now, and we're expanding our reach, is we have just gone through a training with the Ohio Chief Probation Officers Association. Ohio is divided up of some courts have their own probation department, so they have a figurehead called a chief. The other half of our counties have the adult parole authority come in and provide a probation officer. So for those local entities that have their own chiefs, I have just been through a training to train the chiefs about all of the things available to them, giving them the statistics, what it looks like, what a veterans treatment court looks like, what the memorandum of understanding is, and also how to partner with the VJO. We had VJOs from across Ohio come in to get up and introduce themselves, to leave cards with every chief within their region. And in those moments, more God moments happen. I'm going back in the spring now to train 350 to 400 line probation officers from around Ohio. We will bring in all the VJOs from across Ohio to do the partnering. Because did I say it was free? It's free. If you are a local government entity and you are strapped for funding, why would free not be great for you? because they're partnering with somebody who's going to help them identify what treatment options are available, and they will help drive the veteran to the treatment program. They will help work on transportation issues. They will help get them into the veteran service commissions in their local counties to help bridge them in those gaps. The VJOs also do a homeless program. So if a veteran is homeless, they find them stable housing. If they're coming out of prison and re-entering, they help them in the re-entry and hook them back up to benefit. This holistic wraparound program is exactly what we've been talking about. And Ohio can be on fire for veterans today, tomorrow, and as we grow. We're in year 17 of a war that seems to have no end. And they will come back needing all of us. I thank District 1 for inviting me up to their district conference meeting to give me the opportunity to talk to the American Legion department commanders of their posts in order to talk about this program and this initiative. Because the one thing that all of these treatment courts know makes us successful is all of you. You see, I am not the 1%. For me, it's one of my great regrets in life that I didn't serve in some branch of military. I don't know why. I was graduating high school in the 1980s, and I was headed to college, and I don't know why that was not my path. One of my girlfriends went into the National Guard, but it was just one of those things. But as I look back, I look at your life of service and what you've given to this country, but also what you're doing just by being here today and continuing the work for the veterans that come to your post and helping them, making their lives better. But in making those district meetings and talking to post commanders, what we're really looking for is that next piece that the commander, Schmidt, has focused on. It's peer mentoring. You see, I can meet with a veteran and I can be sympathetic and empathetic, and I am a very good listener. But I don't have what you have. I don't have a shared life of service. So when I sit down with them and take their hand and say, "Hi, I'm Sharon," I can't talk to them about what they are feeling and what's going on with them, because I am not them. But all of you are. And all of those in your post are. So as I've been going across Ohio, we are trying to grow our peer mentoring program. And peer mentor means exactly what it sounds like. A peer and a mentor. They are not probation officers. They are not tattletales. They don't reveal confidential. It's a confidential relationship. Obviously, if they're going to take their own life or they're going to commit another crime, there's a duty there, but it's really about being there to being that ear. When you hear from veterans who are serving in that capacity, it is a wondrous event to know they're there. There's a story that makes it very important as to why we need more peer mentors. I was down in Athens County, and the judge there didn't have any peer mentors. So he gives out his personal business card and his cell phone number. In the middle of the night, a veteran calls him who's on his treatment court docket, and he's talking about killing himself. And the judge talks him down, convinces him that he needs to come see him, and they get him into treatment. 2 weeks later, another veteran on his docket does the same thing in the middle of the night. He's telling me the story and he starts crying because of the emotion of that moment. The power of saving lives. Because he's afraid to have one of the 22. And you all know what it means, the 22. Sadly, the majority are coming out of the Vietnam War era. Some are coming home from the sandbox of Iraq and Afghanistan and taking their lives. And as I traveled Ohio, every judge knew of one. A boy in Jackson who killed himself in the 7-Eleven because he had nothing left after he came home. A boy in Gallia who hung himself because he couldn't stop the nightmares of the war conflict of Afghanistan after multiple tours of duty. To the destroyed life of the young man down in Lawrence who in a helicopter crash broke his back, and while they stitched him together and they took him off his painkillers, he turned to heroin to relieve the pain. Luckily for him, a judge there knew what his story was and held him in jail long enough to get him into treatment. To the one suffering from PTS that he feared would become the 22, and he held him long enough to get into the 13-week treatment inpatient facility in Cleveland. These are the story of Ohio. These are the story of all of you, your brothers and sisters. And I'm asking for an opportunity to come and spread the word, the good work of the commander of your organization and of what we're doing together. With more education and information and knowledge about what we can do for veterans, we will stand shoulder to shoulder and have the ability to do more and create the Ohio that has all veterans returning wholly home. God bless you. Thank you for being the 1%, and thank you for your service, and may God bless all of you and your families this Thanksgiving season. I have business cards with my office phone number. I'll leave some with Suzette's. Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the status of, let's say, National Guard or reservists who have not deployed, have not been activated, but they've served 20 years in the Guard or the reservists and then retired? Or even the short-time retirees?
So what ends up happening is the VA system has their own eligibility that was created by Washington. I am not knowledgeable of what is and isn't eligibility for the VA. I do know that there is a public information officer that we have made contact with for a bar association who wanted training on how to determine eligibility. I can forward his contact information to Suzette, and that is someone who could come and do one of your regional programs, because they're always looking for opportunities to come and talk about those very issues.
Okay, and the second question was, after they get them to the treatment program, they make it through the treatment program, is there any follow-up? Is that done by the VA? Is that done by the courts? Who checks on them?
So what ends up happening is once they get off paper in the court, they usually don't come back. But what I have witnessed, so I was recently in Butler County and spoke at a Veterans Treatment Court graduation. Many of those who had been through the program before and graduated, they come back. They become peer mentors. I'd like to create an Ohio where instead of them going back on their own, there is a community that even among us, we develop within each county that telephone chain or a resource where there's a weekly meeting where veterans just get together, where they're not in a position where they might use again or put themselves back into a position of relapsing. Those are the things that I believe that with an annual summit we can talk and grow what happens. I spent 10 years on the Alcohol Drug Addiction Services Board in Butler County, Ohio. And what I wanted was a clean and sober house. I could put them in a men's facility, in the women's facility, I could dry them out and get them sober, but what did I do at the end of that? I put them right back in the same living situation as before. So it was really hard to stay clean and sober when everybody else is using. So my goal was to buy an apartment building and then to run this clean sober to get their legs underneath them. Ottawa County is doing something like that, the judge up there. He has bought one house with partnering with community leaders, and he has a men's sober house that even if after they get off probation, they're living together. after about a year of living sober and clean, stable employment, they're then going out on their own. He's now building a women's facility. He is partnering with and reaching out to religious leaders. We hear this conversation that we should be in partnership with the faith-based community. We just need to have the conversation and come together with a core mission of how we get that done. And I believe together we can do that. And we can do exactly what you're talking. What I would call is aftercare and making sure that they're staying clean and sober. And if they do have a problem, like, you know what? All of us have problems. All of us have family matters, pressing matters, calamity, trauma that happen to us in daily living. They are more particularly sensitive and perhaps in jeopardy of relapsing when those things happen if they don't have someone to call, which is why peer mentoring becomes important, because it's really about having that friendship. That's a second part of growth. Another part of growth, to answer that, would be to create the Bible of resources across Ohio. Did anybody here know that in September a group came to Ohio called Save a Warrior, and that they opened a village in Licking County in Heath, where they actually do the reverse training of taking them from lone wolf back to reintegration into civilian life and not being alone, trying to save the 22. 5 of you shook your heads yes, you had heard of it. For everybody else who hasn't, you should do the tour, do the outreach, see the facility. They're now talking about, instead of just those who are scoring high on the ACEs scale, how can they do a 1 or 2 day program for lower numbers on the scale? How can they then do an annual alumni convention or treatment to rebolster that and bring in spouses for another treatment educational program? Those are the things that I'm talking about. Great question, thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, Justice Kennedy.
Just Sharon.
Thank you for coming to the first district too.
Thank you.
From the first district. And I was talking to our one of our judges, Judge Nice, which you and I talked about, and he said we really do this in Putnam County, but he goes, because we have different resources and stuff and we're smaller. Is that true or not true?
It is. So what that's talking about is that infusing of these techniques. But that leads me to, if you come across the state to Seneca County here. Seneca County, the General Assembly just enacted a piece of legislation that allows the Seneca Municipal Court and the General Division of the Court of Common Pleas to run a joint drug court. So municipal court, actually its jurisdiction is combined, it's a 5-year pilot project. So my suggestion back to Putnam County is, why can't we do it on a regional concept? If we figure out transportation, why couldn't we run one veterans treatment court in a region, getting the General Assembly to create that joint jurisdiction, where municipal courts, general divisions, in a group of courts actually create one treatment court, one treatment team, and we work on transportation issues for that. And bringing all the veterans together so that the VJO can come out and have one place to go to service all of them together and to bridge those community partnerships. That's another idea for those regions, that the General Assembly is looking for those kinds of ideas right now to improve the life of our veterans.
Thank you, and thank you for coming to the Putnam County Fair on June 24th to speak.
I look forward to it. Thank you so much. Anyone else? Thank you so much for your time today. God bless all of you, your families, and happy Thanksgiving. There's also these books about VA services available. If you need more, I'm going to leave Suzette with my business card. We're happy to mail out